maintain radio propriety. We'll begin in a few minutes when everyone joins.
But the audio is not transferred so far to the participants, is it?
They can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Konstantin Dranch speaking. Welcome to this today's episode of the Xillio show of our webinars. And here today we have a very interesting topic, the unveil of Xillio's marketplace and the return of the ecosystem. And we have an all-star panel. Let me start quickly with the introduction of our panel. I hope you enjoy everyone's haircuts. I guess they have been self-administered or self-inflicted, depending on your skill during this quarantine. So let me start with Rickert Engels, the CEO of Xillio. Rickert, maybe you say hi.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Excellent. Alison Furch, the CEO, the head of Gala.
Hi, good morning. It is morning where I am. Good morning.
Yes, it's very early, 7 o'clock in the morning in the West Coast. Next, let's go with Mark Mitak from Translate 5, the inventor. Mark, we don't hear you. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Hello. Hello together. No, I'm not on mute. No, I'm not muted anymore. Hello.
Thank you. So Mark is joining from Germany. Marcus Casal from Amplexer.
Hello, joining here from the East Coast of the US.
Hello and welcome. And Jim Compton from Moravia, the Technology Partnership Manager.
Hi, folks.
Jim, are you joining from Colorado?
I am in Denver. That's correct.
Perfect. So I think the balance of power is shifting towards the United States. And let's check if Klaus Fleischmann is online. Klaus,
yes.
Maybe...
I'm
hey,
here.
good to see you.
And I actually managed to use my right camera, so you can see me as well now.
Yes. This is your office, right?
Yes. Well, no, it's my home office.
Perfect.
Which has been my office.
So today in this webinar, we're going to go through the presentation of the marketplace and two integrations, Translate 5 and Connecting Content, and then go into the discussion. The topic, of course, everyone knows. How can you assemble your translation technology stack from different components, how you can pick the best Lego blocks so that you build the system as you like it without locking into one particular vendor and having the freedom to change them all. Before we begin, let's launch the poll and see who is here and what are your expectations. So Purdy, if you would assist me and launch the poll for the attendees to see if it's the vendor side or the buy side represented more today.
Absolutely.
So, typical to questions, please click through to indicate where you're at and what you prefer. And we'll focus on your preferences when we run the discussion. The house rules is usual, of course. Please ask us questions all through the webinar. We'll sift through them and pick the most interesting questions at the end of the webinar at the discussion phase. I hope we can make it in 1 hour, but we have 7 people online, few speakers. So if we run a little bit over time, don't worry, it's all good. Purdy, has everyone voted? How's the statistic?
We're at 62%. 63
Give a couple
now,
more
so.
seconds.
Yes.
We are close to 100 participants today, so a very good crowd, and we're expecting a few more. There's been almost 200 registrations, full room. If we get to 100, then no one else can join.
No, that's not true. We upgraded.
You upgraded. Aha.
Yes.
Well done.
I mean, the last
All right,
webinar
so
we were at 97, so it was time to upgrade.
Okay, so for
Can we share the
75%? Yeah, here goes.
Okay, so mostly LSPs, 70% of LSPs, a little bit of technology, about a little bit of buy side and consultants. And the most interesting topic today is the marketplace and the integrated software features. So please take your time describing what the offering is about. And the second is how LSPs can develop business with it. Perfect. At the moment, under COVID, everyone is looking for a new way how to grow the business, how to keep it healthy and operational. And probably we should discuss this in more detail. I think Jim and Marcus, that falls to you. After the unveil, after the presentation, let's start with you to see how that fits into an LSP strategy. And all right, thank you very much. Let's begin. Alison, you are the lady of the day. Please open up the show.
Ladies first.
All
Okay.
over to you.
All right.
And I'll go to your slides.
Thanks. So I figure that Konstantin asked me to start because he wanted the layperson's version of what this is all about, because I suspect we'll get into some more technical things later. And duly noted that nobody wants to hear about TAPICC, so I'll make this really brief, but there is a tie-in. And like I said, I'm not sure, you're mostly LSPs, but I don't know if you're engineers or tech savvy, so I'll just keep this at a really high altitude. It's a familiar problem that the language services industry has, I suppose, hundreds probably of different kinds of technology that are used throughout the supply chain. And to date, there have been very few commonly accepted standards that enable interoperability between these systems. And so instead, when a company needs to connect to a client's technology or have their vendors connect, there's an integration, and anytime they onboard a new client, there's another integration. So you get a lot of redundant code development, a lot of expense in research and development, and it's wasteful, quite frankly, and it doesn't need to happen that way. And we also end up with these sort of fully custom solutions and what I consider closed ecosystems, right? They're just not built to mix and match. So it creates a scenario where companies feel locked in to their choices. And I don't know about you, but I don't think lock-in is the right kind of sales strategy. I think it's terrible for progress and innovation. I think that it's bad for the customer. And it's restrictive about, like I said, matching, mixing, using technologies. So in broad brushstrokes, that's the problem that, that TAPICC is trying to solve. So on to TAPICC, the initiative was conceived of, you can go to the next slide, Konstantin. It was conceived of as a way to enable interoperability and improve automation in the translation round trip. It's based on the assumption that a mature industry relies on common standards that serve all players equally. You know, what we see now is in the US, we'd call it the Wild West, right? Where it's no rules and every man for himself. So we wanted to address that. We want to see a scenario where being interoperable it's expected. It's the de facto. It's not a differentiator when you're choosing your technologies or your platforms. Rather, interoperability should be an equalizer, and it should leave technologies to compete on feature set, on customer care, on the strength of their MT engines, on anything else besides whether or not they're interoperable. Many of you know who David Phillip is, and he once told me by way of explanation that companies should be competing on the special sauce, not on the can opener. So that's how I like to think of it. TAPICC is open source, it's community driven, it's volunteer led, it's open to everybody. We have broad representation from different industry stakeholders, and we've worked really hard to build consensus. Where we are now, and this is where I'll hand off to the other panelists, after about 3 years, and you can go next slide, Kostya. The volunteers' work has focused on defining requirements, discussing metadata that's essential in handoffs, building specifications. Jim's done a ton of work actually on the API specification itself. And it's only recently turned into working on actual implementations. And that's where Xillio comes in, and Kaleidoscope and RWS and others on the call today that have actually made implementations using sort of TAPICC compliant approach. So on a less technical level, what we're after now is to evangelize this approach that we're going to talk about today, and the long-term vision of promoting industry standards. Efforts like this require a network effect. We need more people to buy into the idea, to make their technologies compliant, and to get on board with actually practicing this. And the more we get, the more folks are going to see ROI and benefits. So I'm delighted that we're here talking about interoperability and talking about the ecosystem. And I'm looking forward to hearing what Xillio has been working on and developing, and what you guys have too. So that's it for me, and back to you, Kostya.
Alison, I just want to ask you one question before we go on. So you've been advocating for this like 3 years, maybe a little more, and you've been planting an enormous amount of seeds, and there's been a huge effort. And for years, I feel like TAPICC was going quite slow, and finally you can see that there's something growing up, right? The flowers start to appearing, some fruit is being born. How do you feel about this? Do you feel satisfied that after years of work, the initiative is bearing fruit?
Absolutely. You know, that's the nature of volunteer initiatives, right? Jim has a day job, and Klaus has a day job, and all the folks, there's many that have worked on the project, have jobs. And so whenever it's a volunteer initiative, it's naturally slow. It took a company like Xillio and Klaus doing a reference implementation of their own at Kaleidoscope to advance it. I think that once it moves more into the commercial space, that's where we're going to see traction. So I'm delighted. And it's, like I said, it's open source. Scala doesn't own it. We don't stand to gain anything from it. So I'm pleased to have it drive ahead regardless of who's behind it. So that said, absolutely. And like I said earlier, we just need more people to buy into this vision and to choose to make their tools compliant.
Well, thank you very much. That was Alison first from Gala, and Rickard, it's now over to you for the unveil for the central piece. I understand that we have some ground to cover here.
I will try to go fast. So let me first try to explain, actually, Alison, because I really love your intro. I am trying to explain why TAPICC is the wisest commercial decision to make, and so I will try to include that in the story. Because our reasons to build Lockup completely on TAPICC basically everybody telling us like, you're crazy. Why are you working in a standard that nobody really follows? Because in my view, that's the fundamental view that I will explain in a bit, is like new opportunities arises through an ecosystem approach. So if you follow a modern digital ecosystem approach in a product, new opportunities arises for all attendees. And what these new insights are, it is always a bit hard to actually predict at the start. But the fundamental element is that if you follow a modern digital ecosystem approach, new opportunities arises. And we actually already see that happening. So first of all, I'm a big advocate of kind of interoperability. We are a big advocate of free content and all these kind of things. It has been part of the DNA. But also from a commercial point of view, TAPICC is basically a foundational layer for modern digital ecosystems, and modern digital ecosystems are the way to go. And so there's also a very strong commercial reason behind us supporting TAPICC. I just basically think it's the only way to grow. And so that's basically my commercial pitch here, and the commercial support and the reason why we are so behind TAPICC. Now, a little bit about Xillio. We started in 2004. We started with the belief that content should be free, that content should move within an organization, and that there's a lot of value in content. We started doing web content migrations. In 2010, we moved to do enterprise content migrations. In 2014, 2015, we started with the development of the interoperability platform. And the interoperability platform is really the foundational layer of the content integration that we currently provide. So we didn't start with a connector solution to provide translation automation. We started with the development of an interoperability platform between content management systems, because the problem we were about to solve was, instead of forcing organizations to migrate everything to a single content management system, we would allow them to, let's say, migrate to Adobe what they wanted to migrate, and to leave in WordPress and Drupal what they wanted to leave in WordPress and Drupal. So that was the foundational thought behind development of the API. And while we developed that, we started to explore different industries, and it was picked up by SDL, and SDL didn't use it for Tridion in the first place, but they used it actually for translation. And that led us to dive deeper into the translation industry. And that led to the introduction of the localization hub to make it wider. And that led to the introduction of the localization of marketplace to really provide, let's say, really a true ecosystem approach here. Now, the reason why this API is so important is because because we build it for interoperability, it now gives more levels of automation that is not possible with, let's say, normal connector frameworks. If we can go to the next slide. So the clients we always serve, of the clients we typically serve, are the larger clients, like the Canon and KLM and the governments, etc., where we have done migration clients, or where we have done migration projects. Go to the next slide. Now, what I always like to dive into is basically a little bit of a look back at how enterprise software started. If I look at enterprise software, it started in 1990, where it was all relationship managers that sold enterprise suites. In 2010, however, it moved to solution engineers that offered real platforms because it needed to be open. In 2015, it became API first technologies, and it became a developer that was very important. And in 2020, that really led to ecosystems. So what is actually the message here? The message here is that it is not really MT that drives change within the translation industry. It's actually cloud, because cloud favors API first, and clouds trigger the start and the possibility of ecosystem approaches. Next slide. So what we are really trying to do, and what the consequences of the translation industry and the way it was handled, is that the typical translation process is a process between a translation provider and a translation department. And as a result of that, the marketeer is typically a little bit ignored, and the marketeer has to follow up, and in the way the marketeer has to enter the content, it often takes roughly 10 clicks to make the automation possible. Now, what we are trying to solve here, if you go to the next slide, is that what we are really trying to solve here is that the modern translation pipeline doesn't start at the localization department, but the modern translation pipeline starts at the marketeer. So what we try to achieve here is with these improved automation capabilities that you set up the rules for translation and for automation once, and that the localization department then sets the settings basically, and the quality criteria and the workflow to send it to any translation provider or any LSP of choice. So what we are really trying to do here is to make it as easy as possible for the marketeer to send content for translation, and that the localization department can set the rules, can set the workflow, can set the quality criteria, and work with the technology and with the translation provider of choice. So if you then, and so to summarize it, what we are trying to do is an API-powered digital modern ecosystem approach, where we decouple the content management automation from the translation automation. And so if you really want to think, what is lockup in essence, and you really want to bring it to the core of the core, lockup provides two things. The first thing we provide is that we decouple content automation from translation automation, making it possible, of course, then to work with any provider and with any technology. And the second thing, what we are trying to do is that we try to bring lockup to the marketeer and provide new insights into multilingual content performance, multilingual content continuity, etc. So we try to focus for the ease of use for the marketeer, that's one element, and we decouple the content automation from the translation automation. And the way to achieve this is we follow an API-powered digital ecosystem approach. And of course, the best way to achieve that is to embrace TAPICC, because that makes it then the easiest possible. So what is the marketplace? The marketplace is in essence a search platform. It is a search platform that allows language service providers and tech providers to promote their services, and it allows enterprises to basically select any language provider or any enterprise or any tech provider, because it is already integrated through the marketplace. So what it basically allows, it basically is a first offering of all the technologies available and all the LSPs available. And so it really is a search platform there. It's not meant for a direct booking. It is meant as a search platform so that you see what innovation and capabilities are available. And what are then the main advantages? The main advantages for an LSP is really to promote your services. That is the first thing, but also to compete with a better automation story. You can offer connectors and integration to your clients. You can offer advanced automation based on metadata that nobody else can do. I will not dive into it right now because it is too complicated, but you cannot compare connectors. You cannot compare any connector to any connector. There's a huge difference between the quality of a connector, and because of the quality of the connectors, we can also offer advanced automation that a simple connector cannot do. So we offer automation based on content type. We offer automation based on metadata, and as such, there's more flexibility in the automation. Now, we also know that many LSPs do not have a big army of developers that can actually implement connectors and are worried about the last mile for the customization of a WordPress or a Drupal site, for instance. So therefore, we offer configuration and last mile services for €45 per hour. So it's incredibly cheap. So there should be no reason to not offer connectors, because you can always go to us for the last mile configuration. Of course, it's made in such a way that you can do it yourself, but we just want to make sure that we offer end-to-end automation capabilities for you. So hence we offer also the services for €45, so that you cannot even do it yourself for the price of 45. And there are two ways to integrate. You can integrate through a hot folder, so that your current technology that is not yet TAPICC integrated can at least be integrated. Yeah, so if you work with MemoQ, you work with Plunet, you work with MemSource, they all are not TAPICC compliant yet, but they do support a hot folder integration. So you can work through a hot folder, but of course the modern way is to integrate through TAPICC. And very, very important for LSPs, it's free. So there's no charge. You can sign up for free, and you can advertise your services, and you can resell our connectors and offer a better automation story. Now, if I go to the, and there was a question actually in the chat I saw popping in about MT providers. Yes, MT providers as well. So I don't think that any MT provider is already on the marketplace, but I know that at least a couple of them will be there very, very, very soon, if not already during. Then the main advantages for the enterprise. The main advantages for the enterprise is, as I said, it's a freedom of choice. It's integrate any LSP, any technology, and try the innovation. So it's not only the fact that you can integrate any LSP or that you can integrate any technology. What it's also extremely valuable is that because your content is already integrated and decoupled from any other technology, you can try new innovation on the marketplace very, very easily. And especially if it's TAPICC integrated, nothing's stopping you from trying that other piece of a technology. This is one of the, let's say, fundamentals behind an ecosystem approach, that new possibilities arise. And so if you have an in-context review tool that is integrated through TAPICC, you can suddenly try that. If a natural language generation tool would integrate with lockup, then that is also possible. We are talking to a content creation tool that will integrate within lockup. So that means actually that content creation is also possible as a technology within lockup. So there are several advantages there. The other advantage, of course, that you have modern and advanced automation. So microservices, metadata-based workflow. There's no hiccups in your process, and it's a far better user experience for your internal stakeholders. I know that a go-to, let's say, method of automating is through a plugin, and we do have plugins as well. But if you know the plugin, it still requires 10 clicks to actually set up content for translation. So because it is the go-to automation method, in my view, it doesn't mean it's the best automation method. In my view, the best automation method is that you don't do anything. You don't do anything. You provide end-to-end automation, maybe just a metadata field that reduces the impact to zero. And that you really give to the marketeer the option, I want to have content within 4 hours translated, I want to have it in 12 hours translated, but you make it extremely quick. On that front, I have really cool news to share actually. So we, in about 1 or 2 weeks, but I have permission to announce it today, we will announce a deep strategic partnership with Acquia. Acquia is the commercial version of Drupal. So they are going to work together with us on content migrations. And we are also working on a translation solution that will be deployed and offered by Drupal and Acquia that really provides better multilingual performances for the marketeer. So this will bring content, multilingual content to the marketeer. So this partnership is already live. It will be announced by a press release in 2 weeks. Expect over the summer, at the end of the summer, also innovations on the front of the content management. And third advantage is the central reporting and insights of all your content flows. So you have a single dashboard of which you can where you can actually see the content, etc. And because of that, we can offer reports based on content continuity, so that you actually see if your content experience throughout the whole chain is actually uninterrupted, and that you can offer a continuous content journey. So which is of course incredibly important, so that and that also offers opportunities then of course to provide more value as a localization department or as an LSP in your offering. Because at the end of the day, we all create multilingual content. The end goal is that it actually converts, and we should never forget that. Multilingual content is about multilingual business. A multilingual business is about making money outside of your home country. So the main goal is still of multilingual content, does it convert into new business? And that is where our background is, and that insights we try to infuse into the localization hub. That's it.
Thank you, Rickard. So that was the presentation of the translation marketplace. What's the idea like? What are the concepts behind it? And now let's move to the more practical implementations. Klaus, would you like to start? Could you maybe share your screen and show how your solution works like?
Sure. I cannot because you're still sharing.
Okay, let me take care of this. stopping my share.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yep.
Was it sh or sure? Or
All
both?
right. You should be able to see my screen and my PowerPoint, I guess. Can you confirm?
Yep.
That looks good.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so what I was asked to show was two of our implementations that we have built already with Lockup. And I want to start out with the architecture that I actually borrowed from the Xillio slide deck. So essentially, this is where the TAPICC API comes in, which of course is a topic that's very dear to my heart. And as Xillio puts it, they basically wrap all these content providers onto a unified API on their lockup and expose it again in a unified API via TAPICC. So you can connect all these systems, and yes, it includes machine translation systems, onto lockup. And we actually did that. So as some of you might know, we're an STL technology partner. So whatever we do somehow has to do with STL. So we have built a simple Studio plugin that connects directly to the TAPICC API and can pull projects from there and translate them. We also have a product that's called Connecting Content, which is basically yet another middleware, if you want, that fully automates Studio Group Share World Server, so STL technology stack. And that can actually automate these systems based on several technologies. So hot folder is one of the things that you already mentioned, Rickard. We also support things like Koti or our own API. We have a portal. And of course, we now have built a TAPICC integration to that. And I want to show you two examples. And I have to say what you said about automation, these examples are not fully automated. They are manual. Because it would be super boring to have a demo that is fully automated. You can't see a thing. So I have a manual video that I did here for 2 minutes exactly. So what I did is I actually set up a little site here, connectivitydemo.com. It's actually online, I think, on WordPress. And I wrote one blog article about the release of our integration with Xillio. And I did that in German, obviously. I'm Austrian, so I have to write this in German. But I now want to localize it into English using Lockup. So I am now manually connecting through Lockup. This is the Lockup UI, which normally would be automated. I am manually connecting to my WordPress instance, and I am creating a TAPICC task here. So I selected my blog article to be translated into one language, into English, and I'm submitting that. And you can see, okay, it now has the status new on the TAPICC host, on the Xillio TAPICC host. And I'm now going to publish it. So I'm going to change the status so that it is published on the host, and we can now pull it into Studio. To pull it into Studio, this is STL Trados Studio, we built a plugin. So here, basically, we have a Connecting Content plugin where I can connect to my demo lockup site that Xillio gave us. And now with just one button, I can say, okay, look on that TAPICC host to see if there's any jobs. And of course, there is. And then here I can do some Studio specific things. And basically, when I click on finish with one N, it finishes the project and creates the project in Studio. Where I can now translate it just like any other Studio project. So I'm not going to go into details on this. This basically is the English localization of our press release or our blog. And then again, from within Studio, I can return it. I can also complete the task while returning it, which can, for example, prompt Lockup to automatically send it back to WordPress. And with that, I'm actually done. And the translation ends or lands directly in WordPress. So if I refresh the backend here, the WordPress backend, you can see that the English translation has now arrived. And if I click on that, then you can see, okay, everything that I localized previously in Studio has now landed here. So this is a rather manual process. I have a second example with our Adobe Experience Manager, where we use actually a plugin, as you said, Rickard. So again, I'm not showing a fully automated solution because the demo would be very boring. Rather, I actually start out with the plugin. So here in AEM, we are selecting an asset, this About Us page that we want to localize, and we're using the Xillio plugin to create the language copies of that. So Dutch, obviously, it's Xillio after all, and French for some reason. And I'm going to call this project New, a very creative name, but we all know that name. And then we have a localization job in AEM that we can publish on the TAPICC host, so on Xillio Lockup. And there we are, it is now published. And actually in this workflow, automatically sent on to connecting content, our middleware, which also has a TAPICC interface. So you can see it here in the middle. I'm ahead of my video. There we go. So you can enable this to listen to a TAPICC call, again, on our Kaleidoscope lockup account. And when we get the TAPICC call, we can automatically run this job sequence, which is very STL specific. So we basically create an STL project, we analyze it, pre-translate it, create project TMs, and then ultimately upload this to the STL group share server. And if you know group share, you'll understand that, okay, you have these organizations. We're going to automatically push it into the translation phase. We're going to use the assigned teams from the STL template. And again, it would be boring to show this manually, so I'm actually running this in the console. And you can see that we get the TAPICC calls here. So it's creating a job, a task, uploading a document, and then our STL API takes over. So you can see it's now analyzing, pre-translating, doing the project TM stuff, uploading this to group share, assigning the project teams, and it's done. So if I refresh group share here, this is STL group share, you can see that my task called new has arrived. We can open that in Studio, just like any normal group share project. It's a completely normal group share project, of course. We can translate it, and when the project is then completed or reaches a certain phase, then our connecting content middleware will again automatically push the translated file back via the TAPICC protocol. So we're always using TAPICC when we communicate with lockup. So we send it back to lockup, and then lockup eventually pushes it back to Adobe Experience Manager. And I had 5 minutes. I hope I stayed within those 5 minutes, more or less. And with that, I guess I have to stop my screen share. So Konstantin, you can take over again.
Well done, Klaus. That was 5 minutes, very concise and very visual.
Yeah, thanks.
Mark, it's over to you now. Show us what you have with the Translate 5 integration.
Okay, hello. So you should see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Everything's
okay.
working perfectly.
Okay, great. So perhaps a few words to Translate 5 first. Translate 5 is an open source translation system, which we are developing since 2011. And of course, open source is standing for open. So the TAPICC approach is something I'm into and following since a few years, and also working with people on open standards since a few years. And therefore, we welcomed very much the idea of the TAPICC integration with the lockup Xillio setup. And we think that open standards and open source software as well is very important to be not locked into technical scenarios. So what we did here is a little bit like Klaus. We did a WordPress integration via lockup, where the data goes from WordPress into lockup and from there into Translate 5 and back. And as Klaus did it also, I'm not showing a fully completed automation scenario because that would be boring. So you see a little bit similar things like we did already. So here you see now the WordPress backend with the Translate 5 mission article. You see that it's not translated so far. You see a lot of pluses there. So the German translation is missing, which I will be doing soon. This is the article, how it looks like in the layout, which we are going to translate. And now we are switching to lockup. And here you see I already created a job, and now I will be creating a task in lockup with this Translate 5 mission WordPress page. Going to click next and submit the job. Now here's the new job with the status new. And now I mark it ready for translation. And now everything is ready. I switch to Translate 5. Here you see there are 2 jobs in there. Refresh the list. There's nothing else there. Now I'm going shortly to the command line because this is usually not visible. You usually run that automatically in the background. Now I just started here so that you are seeing that something is happening there. So usually no one has to start that manually. Now that is done and run through, and I'm switching back to translate 5, refreshing the project list, you now see the next project that came in. And I'm going to assign a user. And then shortly going to translate that with that user. Therefore, I log out as a project manager and log in as the translator. Translate 5 is a fully web-based cloud translation system that you also can install yourself on your own server because it's open source. You also can integrate it and extend it in the way you wish. Now I opened it. It's translation in complete context. You can do that for every kind of file format, for InDesign, for FrameMaker, and for any kind of integrations with CMS systems like WordPress here. And now I will be editing the segment here that you see that something has changed. It had been pre-translated with DeepL in the background before, changing here things that DeepL did not write. See the track changes markup in there. And now I say that the job is finished. Everything else is fine, like DeepL did it in this case. And now the job is finished. We are switching back to the command line to again run the transfer job that brings things back to lookup, again via TAPICC protocol, because open protocols are very important. Switching back to lookup, and you see now the status is delivered, and we're pushing it back to WordPress via publish to source. These are things that lookup also can automate, of course. Now I will refresh the WordPress site, and you see now there's a pencil icon at the German, meaning the translation is there. Now I will be switching to here to the Translate 5 page again with the English. It's just a demo page, so no perfect layout here. And now there is a German button, language button, and the translation is here, including the segment that I changed from the DeepL translation. All the rest is still DeepL. Yeah, so that was the integration and fully into the integration setup. Perhaps a few words regarding open source and open standards with Translate 5. It's our main goal since a lot of years already, and people who know me in the industry know that I'm preaching more or less that since a lot of years, that it's really important for language service providers, the more automation goes on, to have the possibility to be in an open scenario, in an open ecosystem where they can choose technology, and where also the customers, the end clients who order translations are able to choose the technology and are able to choose the language service provider, and are not bound by some kind of login into software, login into language service providers, but choose technology and choose language service providers according to the quality of what they do and according to the prices, according to the flexibility. So that's what we are supporting since a lot of years. And yeah, that's why it was natural for us to go for TAPICC.
Thank you, Mark. That was a very good demonstration. So we see here 3 systems working in unison and supporting each other. Normally you would see one less, and that would take over this, but in this case, you build your technology stack from the components that you like. And this is pretty new, right? There is no other ecosystem that supports this. So my question is, how can you use that? What's the advantage for an LSP? What can you gain out of this kind of scenario? Marcus, what do you think? What's your opinion? Amplexor is one of the largest LSPs in the world. What's your beef here? Why would you support this this scenario? What's the advantage?
I think that's a really good question, and I think you touched on it with the discussion of having basically a set of building blocks, a set of Legos, right? I don't think most customers want to be locked in to a particular technology and provider ecosystem. And the idea of a spaghetti, basically, of point-to-point connectors, right? From one repository to one LSP, from another repository to the same LSP or to a third LSP. So what you have here is really a set of Lego blocks that are very extensible, right? And the extensibility to me really goes to into two things. One is extensibility into different content repositories and content sources, so that we can pull from whatever the customer has, right? I mean, something like 70% of customers have more than 6 active repositories. So you have to meet them where they lie. The other part of extensibility to me, and perhaps one of the most exciting things about this for the future, is in addition to language related and translation and localization use cases, is extensibility into other use cases by having a common API per with each customer's data being able to be treated as one data lake. You're opening the door to analytics, machine learning, other value-added cross-language global use cases beyond just localization. So in a nutshell, to me, it's the extensibility across content repositories. It is also the extensibility across use cases that I think makes a lot more sense. And to the point Rickard made at the start, we have chosen to do this because we think it makes sense commercially, and we think it's part of the value add that we can bring to our customers as well.
Marcus, Amplexor has a long-standing history, right, with TMS. At some point, you invested in XTM, and I think that this is bearing fruit. And I guess at different departments in the company, you've tried many other solutions. So when you go today to a customer, what do you propose? How does your pitch sound like? So, if you can share.
Absolutely. So when we go to a customer, I mean, the first thing is to, again, meet that customer where they are, not where we would like them to be, and listen to where their content is, what automation is possible with that. We very much lead with our Xillio partnership around automation of content into the Amplexor ecosystem. Certainly, we do partner with XTM, and with other TM tools, but especially XTM, around the linguistics, right? The linguistic assets, all of that sausage making of language production that remains very important, and that includes machine translation. But when you are facing the customer, to me, the most important thing is to be able to say we have an extensible, proven framework to automate content in, content out, because ultimately that is a time to market play for our customers, that is a cost play for our customers, and that is a consistency and predictability of quality play for our customers. And we think, especially now, those are the things that appeal to our users, not as much, or to our customers, not as much the the specifics of TM and language assets and MT, all of which is critical, but is more, again, the sausage making as opposed to the interface to the customer.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Jim, what about you? You've always been the visionary in this industry, and you always looked ahead. And if we look at Moravia's story, Moravia has been technology agnostic first, then a huge partnership with MemSource, and now on the RWS, things are changing again. So what's your stance? How do you benefit from this? How do you see this coming into your proposition?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm have always been an evangelist for composability for open ecosystems, and I think for me it comes down to this: like if our value proposition for a customer is that we're helping them create more international sales, right? We need to be utilizing basically all the capabilities that are out there in the interesting world in the changing world to be able to help them maximize their international sales. So for us to, I think any approach that is like a proprietary technology approach is just ultimately a mistake and doomed to fail, right? Things change. You want to be able to adopt new technology as it comes out, and you don't get there with a closed approach. With regard to the marketplace, I'm excited for the marketplace on I think several levels. For us, it's a way, being also advocates of TAPICC, it addresses a real chicken and egg problem, where you wouldn't see it would be difficult to get a critical mass of TAPICC users if you're waiting for individual points in a supply chain to be either a host or a consumer. You sort of need some kind of middleware that everyone can anchor onto, so that they can minimize the amount of development that they do to be able to automate. So I think that's great. I hope I'm answering your question. We're absolutely excited and committed to serving customers who use LocHub through LocHub. So yeah.
You know, my question would rather look like this. So let's say AWS Moravia, you get to speak to a new customer. They're probably pitched by SDL, they're pitched by TransPerfect, WeLocalize. Everyone has their own technology, right? So they're approached by all these providers. You're one of the select group who can pitch, and everyone has their own technology. So how can you win in this scenario?
Yeah,
and especially
I think,
how can you win maybe for customers that are like more modern, more millennials, maybe they want simplicity, maybe.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I like this idea of you're letting them know that you're building your service around their tech stack, not making them change their practices or change their tech stack to serve your tech stack. I think it's an absolute position of strength to not have proprietary technology bound to your service. It could be a strength at one little minor point in history as your technology has a cool feature, but then when everyone else gets that cool feature and someone else gets a new feature, I think for us, the stronger position in the path that we've taken is we can implement anything that's out there that would be in service to what your actual business objectives would be, and to wrap that around your operations, not to make your tech stack conform to our operations.
So the flexibility of excellent. I'm going to open the floor for questions, and please shower us with questions. I'd like to see at least 10 questions in chat in the next couple of minutes. But let me ask Klaus first. So Klaus, Amplexor, AWS Moravia, huge companies, more than 100 million in revenue. But the majority of the translation market is comprised of smaller companies, million, couple of million, that work with smaller customers. Where does the automation-driven RFP start? When do the customer asks you, well, do you have a connector? Do you have an integration? At what kind of level, what kind of spend? Where does the run-of-the-mill translation company should jump in to know we need this offering, we need to offer the competency around the connectors, the flexibility to connect? What kind of client is the entry level to this game?
That's an interesting question. I think there are many answers to that based on your particular situation. Our situation, I mean, apart from the fact that Kaleidoscope is a tech company, we have 100% daughter, which is LSP, as you know.
I'm asking you as the CEO of both, mostly of the LSP.
So using my hat of LSP, our particular challenge is we are in a very expensive part of the world. So what our project managers earn here is a multiple of what they earn in other places, like yours, for example. Well, maybe not a multiple compared to yours, but a lot more. So automation for us is super essential, because otherwise we're just not competitive at all. So I think the client in itself really doesn't matter. We as LSP need to automate, because otherwise there's no way to compete. In terms of what kind of client is interested in automation, I think it's not so much the size of that, it's more the maturity, the process maturity of the clients. We do have huge clients that spend 3 years building a new website and then another 2 years localizing it. So those would not be typical clients for that, even if they should be, but they're not for some reason. And then we have tiny, super tech and innovative companies that if you tell them, well, we can automate that, you know, you win. That's the way in, and that's the way to get those companies, because they like the fact that you are innovative. And it's actually also in the sales process, it's sometimes very, very beneficial. And I think Marcus and Jim said the same thing, that you can talk about these technological things. And you get away from, we provide high quality translation services at a low cost, which we all do or not. But you talk to other people, and we've had clients that simply the fact that we can get their content out of the system and back in, that wins you the deal, because that's actually more of a challenge for them than the fact that we translate brilliantly and cheaply into 20 languages, which they don't understand anyhow. So I think it really depends on the maturity of the client more than the size, really.
Thanks. I have a question for Rickard, actually. Rickard, so there are maybe 600, 700 different language technologies out there. At the moment, on the marketplace, we have Cattle, Translate 5, which is the free and open source, the connectivity middleware. What would be the classes of software that are really needed on this marketplace in order to make the ecosystem stronger? Who should be the ones to first sign up? So we discussed machine translation today. What are the other classes of software that should be there that are not signed up yet?
It's a very good question, and it's actually something we do not really push too much. So I am actually more looking at content creation software and content visualization software and content analytics software, because don't forget, I am trying to focus on the value for the marketeer. So what actually Marcus said, like, okay, the adjacent technologies are probably more interesting, and that's where the real value arises. I think that of course we need TMSs, we need machine translation, but that will go by itself. So I'm not worried about it at all. I think Wordbeat just asked a question, so I guess they will be there soon. I know at least 3-4 machine translation providers will sign up within a week. I know some other TMS parties will sign up within like 1 or 2 weeks. So I'm not worried about that at all. And because first of all, we already provide a hot folder integration. So if a client has a specific need for a TMS, they can integrate anyway. And I think the innovation is absolutely not in adding, let's say, 8 TMSs, because it just basically, it's still the existing status quo. And so the interesting element, I think, is in content creation and content personalization. That is what I'm really after. And because I think what is the value of the ecosystem approach is that you get new insights and new innovations. And I think that that language technology in itself, the language sector in itself, is gonna kind of like it's gonna reinvent itself from pure translation to really hyper personalization and multilingual content creation that actually performs. And because translation in itself is, of course, a kind of commodity game. So it's the rise of MT. So I see more future in the content personalization, hyper personalization, and in multilingual content creation. And so my really outreach is actually on those companies, and my outreach is on the CMS vendors to provide that single automation capability within the CMS itself.
Yeah, I would just add that when you only have connectors and the cattle, offering is very much like a TMS. But when you add all of those other tools that exist in the market, like content personalization, suddenly you're adding the capabilities that TMS cannot just quickly add, right? If you have 20 partners, 50 partners there, then suddenly the strength of an ecosystem outpaces one single software company that is developing one integrated product on a level that they cannot just compete with that.
I know. Also, to put it into perspective, actually here, Konstantin, I was in a webinar with Alvaro, with Miguel, with Tucker, and with Renato. And so I felt a bit like the small dog in kind of in the field of masters. And so I went besides the rules, and I announced the marketplace there already, which was 3 weeks and 2 days ago. And so the official launch was always scheduled for today, but I did kind of a soft launch during that webinar. And since that webinar, 50 LSPs have signed up. So we are at 41 LSPs. We are at 9 tech partners. We have 2 TAPICC integrations, and this is all the soft launch. So the official launch is actually today. So I think it's a remarkable success. It's a remarkable success. I'm very, very honored. I'm very, very pleased. And so I'm just hoping that more TMSs and cut tools and machine translation providers will integrate in lockup, and then preferably through the TAPICC interface.
And I'd like to ask a question to Mark. Mark, so you have a very busy pipeline, right? When you develop something, you have feature requests from all the LSPs. I know that the gravity center of your supporters is in Germany, and they probably load you with all kinds of feature requests. So you kind of adjusted your pipeline and you put the integration with TAPICC and Xillio early on. How was it? Was it easier to integrate than other tools? And also, why would you prioritize this and not the feature requests from your supporters? That's a trick question, of course.
Yeah, the priority was simply because I believe in this idea of the ecosystem, and since a lot of years I'm preaching in industry and a lot of presentations the idea of being open and being flexible and being integratable and extendable and so on. And so I simply could not say no to Rickard when he approached me and said, "Here, how about that?" And then another thing which made it more easy is that the integration could be done by a developer who is not a core Transit 5 developer, and where it was more easy to get time from him. So that's a more personal aspect of that. But the integration was actually not so difficult. It took us about 50 man hours, I would say. So and that's not too bad for a complex integration. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we have just one unanswered question because Rickard, while we were talking, Rickard just went ahead and answered all the questions in Q&A. Well done, Rickard. Now we can discuss them. So let me read out that question from Stephen Holmes. Do you think companies like Adobe or Sitecore or others will ever look to TAPICC as their outbound framework? Or do you think this is going to stay our industry LSP solution? I guess this is the question to Rickard and Alison. Alison, do you think you advocate to the likes of Adobe and Sitecore? I know that Rickard is advocating.
Yeah, that'd be a big win for us. We do advocate to large enterprises, and that's actually in the works. Something Jim and I and a couple of others have been talking about in the near term. I don't know. That's what we need, because as you know, the demand is often what drives the innovation. And so if you've got big clients like that saying, if you want to work with us, then you have to be TAPICC compliant, that would be amazing. Jim, do you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, I just had to get out of mute there. No, I mean, I think that is really when you know you have critical mass, right? When you start having the actual CMS system support the standard as well. I think we've tried to evangelize that. I mean, I actually think seeing the critical mass of interest that we're getting from LocHub, I think maybe makes that easier, right? Because you can point to something like, here's all this usage that's on the standard. I think folks like Adobe are probably reluctant to commit to something before they see that it's actually, active. So.
Well, and I think the other thing to clarify is at the moment, TAPICC is still kind of pre-standard, right? Pre-standardization. I think the long-term vision, maybe, 6 years from now, is that it's some sort of an official, ISO standard or something like that. But for now, we're building something from the ground up, and it requires the groundswell, it requires the network effect. And again, it's volunteer led, so it moves a little bit slower than something that might be commercially led. And for the moment, it isn't a bona fide standard. There's no standards body. We're just really trying to build the consensus around what it ought to be. And I think, next stage is going to be some version of like self-validation or self-certification where companies can, check the boxes of whether they're doing it right. But we're a ways off from being able to say, hey, Adobe, get on board with this standard.
If I could say something just real quick in terms of pitching on TAPICC too, the current TAPICC that we're talking about is track 1, which is very much project based. Track 2 is more segment based and granular. And I actually think that creates some really interesting possibilities when we have the Xillio technology that's, there isn't a track 2 standard to support, but when TAPICC itself evolves to be more granular, I think this idea of composability and interoperability and being able to do more things between different systems becomes even more interesting. So, yeah. So, sorry, Konstantin, go ahead.
No.
Maybe to add from my side. So of course this is the go-to-market from Xillio. Yeah, so the go-to-market is that we go through the marketplace of the CMSs. So we go CMS by CMS, and of course we start with Drupal, because we have a strategic partnership. But we have already been approached by a Contentful, for instance. Yeah, Contentful doesn't want to work together with TransPerfect, with SDL, with Lionbridge to make a connector. It is a horrible experience for their end users. The reason Akia is going to partner with us on multilingual content, I hope that the LSP that serves Akia as a client is not in the room. But you basically made my deal, and because it was such a horrible experience that they thought we cannot give this experience to our clients. So what my value proposition to the CMS players is, partner with me, build a deep integration, and you can send it to any LSP. You don't need to work. Of course, you can still have a partnership with translations.com. You probably need. You can still have a partnership with Lionbridge. You probably still need. You still can have a partnership with SDL. You probably still need. But at least you can give choice to your clients. And so that is what I'm trying to do. And then there are a couple of options how that integration is made. They either build their own connector into LocHub. They either build a TAPICC client, or we build a connector into them. But in essence, the end result is always, because we are a TAPICC host, that for the receiving end, it's always TAPICC compliant. It's just who is going to actually develop the TAPICC conversion at their side.
Klaus, you wanted to answer the question live. Are you still up?
Sure, I'm still here. Yeah, it's not the screensaver, it's actually me. I think one interesting thing when you talk about are we going to get attention from Adobe and Sitecore, personally, I think that's probably unrealistic simply because they have completely different things to worry about and localization is just not important to them. But I think the fact that we got the attention of somebody like Rickard is already a good sign. And I think there's a big ecosystem around these AEMs and Sitecores, etc. I mean, they never ever implement these things themselves. They always have big partners that implement them, and I think those would be rather the people that we should get the attention of, is those big implementers. Or I don't know, Rickard, if there's any competition you have, but that would be the other kind of thing we would need to get on TAPICC. I think it's unrealistic to have anyone at Adobe seriously look at TAPICC and consider implementing that, but having a few of their big partners, that would definitely be pretty much the same effect. And of course, the smaller ones would probably want to follow up.
I'd like to ping Marcus for the next question. He's been silent for a while. So there is a question from Ignacio Sanz, and it falls just into this discussion. Do you think that if the localization sector does not occupy this space of technological solutions for multilingual content, someone else will occupy this? How do you feel about us occupying completely the space for multilingual? Is it going to change? Do you think that the big providers actually will turn towards multilingual and just completely disrupt the localization industry out of there?
I think that's a really good question, and this does go back to the big repository providers. Look, I mean, they have their frameworks, right? Adobe has a very complete framework. WordPress has a framework, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they would, of course, like to operate within their framework, and some of them have tried ecosystem approaches before. But fundamentally, I come back to the fact that most enterprises are not, at least at this point, consolidating only around one repository, whether it's because of purpose, right? I have one repository, an LMS versus a CMS versus a marketing repository, or whether it's because of acquisitions, or, there's just a host of reasons why most enterprises continue to have multiple repositories. So if we take that as what I think is going to be the dominant, is going to continue to be the dominant paradigm moving forward, then I absolutely think the space is there for us as an industry, based on standards like TAPICC, based on Xillio and the LocHub, to be the place where all of these different streams of content can come together, can be optimized for localization. Assets can be leveraged, the classic time to market play, the choice of MT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Adjacent use cases, like Rickert was talking about earlier, can be explored as well. I think that is the space for us. Obviously, again, the large content providers and content technology providers would love it, right? If enterprises consolidated there, and people like Adobe have a very credible ecosystem, but I do think the space is there for us, but I don't think it can be LSP by LSP. I think in that respect, say Amplexer and Moravia and RWS, we compete, but I think we're very much aligned on this vision, right? Companies, enterprises, by and large, do not want to tie their technology and their services into one provider. And I think the LocHub approach makes a lot of sense in this world.
Yeah. So we come up with the idea to let 1,000 flowers blossom, build an army of this flowers, or people like Klaus, Mark, and Rickert, interoperability Jedi, and take on the big guys, on the big CMS providers. I think it's a very nice visual to round it up. Any last words? We're good? Thank you, everyone, for taking part. It was the unveil of the marketplace by Xillio. Join up and sign up to make the ecosystem stronger. And good luck in developing the business post-COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you.